If your gut is healthier, you'll feel better.
Estrogen can actually help with cortisol regulation.
If your estrogen levels are dropping, you're not going to have as much natural serotonin production.
As people get older, their metabolism will decrease.
Estrogen levels and progesterone levels start to fluctuate. Hello and welcome to the Trinity Fit Over 40 podcast with me, Rob Burkhead.
And me, Ben Hughes. We are the co-founders of Trinity Transformation and creators of the Fit Over 40 method. And together with our world-class coaching team, we have helped more than 7,000 women over 40 to fit back into their favorite clothes over the past decade. For more information about what we do, go to www.fit40info.com.
So in today's episode, we're going to reveal why you're not losing weight around menopause because you're not working with your changing hormones.
We speak to a lot of women in their 40s and 50s who are looking to drop a dress size or two, but struggling to see any movement with their weight since approaching the menopause. But the good news is, once you understand what's going on, it's completely possible to work with your hormones rather than against them. And in today's episode, we are going to break down exactly how hormonal changes affect your ability to lose weight during menopause and what you can do to turn things around. So you can drop a couple of dress sizes, feel amazing in your clothes again, and do it all without extreme diets or exhausting workouts.
So first things first, let's establish what those hormone changes are, because there's a lot going on through perimenopause and into menopause. And just to clarify, perimenopause is the period in the run-up to menopause, which could be 10 plus years long. And there's an early perimenopause, a late perimenopause. And what typically is happening during this time, which could be in your late 30s or early 40s, is estrogen levels and progesterone levels start to fluctuate. And prior to this, estrogen and progesterone balance each other out nicely. And that's why you tend to feel better. You might have periods within your monthly cycle where you didn't feel so good, but overall, they should balance themselves out quite well. During this period, what happens is your body starts producing less or releasing less eggs. So you get what's called more anovulatory cycles. These are cycles where your body doesn't release an egg, even though your body is trying to make it release an egg. And then you don't get a rise and fall of progesterone, but estrogen's still high and they don't balance each other out. What's also happening is your ovaries are producing less estrogen, and you then get these fluctuations in both estrogen and progesterone. And then the last change that tends to happen is FSH and LH, which is follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. These are the ones that are trying to get your egg to release and then create the follicle where the egg can be held and then get it to release and be embedded in the womb. These ones rise more and more and more because they're trying to get this egg to come out and ultimately be fertilized for pregnancy, but the egg isn't coming out. So that just gets higher and higher and higher. So you end up ultimately at menopause, which is where you go a year without a period, and into post-menopause, which is any time after that, with high FSH and LH and low estrogen and progesterone. That is all quite complicated, and you don't need to understand this to get good results. And what we like to do at Trinity is simplify things as easily as possible so you can understand it. So what we're going to do today is talk about what this means in terms of weight loss and what you can do about it. The first thing is, and most of the things we're going to talk about today are related to estrogen, actually. Estrogen is this hormone that typically before perimenopause helps to keep you in shape much more easily, means you can get away with a lot more extreme approaches and things like that. So we're going to go through all the different things this affects and what you can do to then work with this change. So change number one is, because you're going to have lower estrogen and kind of fluctuating estrogen through perimenopause and then lower estrogen afterwards, is your body is not going to regulate blood sugar so well. What estrogen helps to do is increase what's called insulin sensitivity, which means your body can process carbs more easily, and you won't get such big blood sugar spikes and crashes. As estrogen levels decline, if you just eat a load of processed carbs, it could be white bread, it could be pasta, it could be chocolate, it could be crisps, your body isn't going to tolerate that so well, and you're going to end up with big spikes and crashes in blood sugar. It could also be things like cereal, things like toast in the morning, things like porridge. They're all classic things. So you'll get these big spikes and crashes in blood sugar. And this is actually a problem for a number of reasons. Firstly, it will make menopause symptoms much worse. So menopause symptoms are always exacerbated by big spikes and crashes in blood sugar. Your body can't tolerate them so well. So you'll get things like hot flushes triggered. You'll get things like low energy levels as a result of the crash in blood sugar. So you'll get fatigue. You'll get brain fog as well. You need good steady glucose to the brain for cognition. You also get things like aches and pains. We see this a lot in clients where they eat sugar, and when we reduce sugar from their diet, their aches and pains go away a lot in terms of joint aches and pains, so they feel more open to exercise. And probably worst of all, when it comes to weight management, you'll get massively increased cravings. So you'll be more likely to eat more because your blood sugar is not regulated so well. You'll get these crashes in blood sugar, and then you'll be really hungry. And the things you'll crave are going to be typically not the healthy stuff. It's going to be the crisp. It's going to be the bread with butter on it. It's going to be the sweet treats, the biscuits, the chocolate, things like that. And last but not least, due to increased insulin resistance, you're going to be more likely to store those carbs that you do eat due to those increased cravings as belly fat. Higher insulin resistance typically leads to storing more belly fat. High insulin levels, sorry, not insulin resistance, but high insulin levels, which will come as a result of insulin resistance. So it's kind of a cascade of side effects that will, worse symptoms mean you're less likely to exercise, increased cravings means you're more likely to eat more, and insulin resistance means you're more likely to deal with those carbs less well, and more likely to store them as belly fat. So what you can do here, though, is you can work with this. It does mean you're going to need to make some changes. If you just eat the same way you always used to, it's not going to, you might gain weight eating the way you used to. You might have had porridge for breakfast before and you managed your weight, and now you can't. You might have had pasta for dinner before and you managed your weight, and now you can't. On a high level, and we work with everyone one-to-one to do this more specifically for everyone, depending on what they like, but it's going to be having less carbohydrates and definitely just less of the processed carbohydrates. So things like sugar, things like bread, things like chocolate, things like biscuits, all of those things your body's not going to deal so well with. And what you want to do instead is to focus on foods that manage blood sugar more effectively. And what this means is, if you imagine a kind of graph, if you can think of like a wave that goes up and down, these simple sugars, these processed carbs lead to very spiky, sharp rises and falls, which causes all those problems I talked about before. If you manage blood sugar more effectively by eating better, you'll get really nice smooth waves with small peaks and troughs. And that means you'll have steady energy levels all day, and you'll have very minimal cravings all day. And our clients always report massive improvement in cravings and energy after just a few weeks. The way you do this is basically to combine protein and fiber in every single meal wherever possible, because those digest really slowly. They slow down the blood sugar release and kind of buffer that whole process. And if you are going to eat carbohydrates, you want to eat less processed ones. So, for example, fruit with the skin on rather than a fruit juice or a smoothie. That's a really simple example. They might both seem healthy, but one of them is processed and is going to cause blood sugar spikes and crashes. The whole fruit, let's say apple with the skin on, or the berries, they are going to digest much more slowly and carefully. If you're having breakfast, another great example is if you're having porridge, or you're having toast before, switch that to something that's higher in protein. So you could add a protein shake with it. You could have an omelette instead. You could have Greek yogurt with berries and some seeds on to add some fiber to that. And that will likely lead to much, much better results. So the first tip I recommend to work with your changing hormones is to change your diet to improve your blood sugar regulation. And you'll feel so much better and likely have much reduced cravings. So you'll lose a lot more weight.
So the second hormonal change then that can have an impact is also related to estrogen. So estrogen is anabolic. So what this means is it will help you with building muscle. The body has kind of processes going on all the time, which are either anabolic processes, which are kind of building processes, or catabolic processes, which are reducing things. So anything that's catabolic is going to reduce the muscle mass that you have, and anything that's anabolic is going to increase the muscle mass that you have. So the normal approach, or most kind of dieting approaches, might revolve either around cardio exercise or around no exercise at all, which is kind of what's known as being sedentary. So just kind of a diet only approach with no exercise. What this results in is a loss of muscle. This is going to trigger that kind of catabolic process where your body is getting rid of muscle. Your body is essentially trying to be as efficient as possible, so it will get rid of anything that you're not using. So if you're not using that muscle effectively, it's going to break that muscle down. This will leave you feeling flabbier, saggier, less toned, slower metabolism. You'll be weaker. You'll struggle with things like climbing stairs or hills. You'll struggle with things like keeping up with kids or grandkids or picking them up. And studies show that basically all metabolism change between the age of 20 to 60. So it's kind of widely accepted that as people get older, their metabolism will decrease. Metabolism being the amount of calories that you burn during the day. So therefore, if you eat the same amount and you're burning less calories, you're more likely to gain body fat. But studies show that all of that reduction in metabolism between the ages of 20 to 60 is basically just due to a loss of lean muscle mass. So it's very, very important that we maintain muscle mass as we age to keep that metabolism high, and also to be able to keep doing all the things that you want to do. And also a bonus of that is you'll feel firmer, you'll feel more toned, and you will look and feel better in general. So the solution to this is you need to not do cardio. You need to not take a sedentary approach. You need to instead do strength training. So what we mean by this is basically lifting heavy weights. So for about 5 to 15 reps. So for example, if you're doing an exercise, you're doing squats, you want it to be between 5 and 15, and you want to be using a weight that actually challenges you for that 5 to 15. So for example, when you get to 10 reps, you're really kind of starting to struggle at that point. That weight is actually heavier than most people think, and it will be a weight that really does actually challenge you. You want to be doing this 3 times a week minimum. So I would say 3 to 4 times is going to be perfect for most people. And keeping the key thing here is it's that kind of heavy weight and lower reps. And that is more important with lower estrogen levels, because you need to be doing the most effective thing to build and maintain muscle. And you will only get that in that 5 to 15 rep range. Lots of people ask us, well, I do body pump, I do this class, I do that class, and we do use weights during that class. If you're using very, very light weights and you're able to do 30, 40, 50 reps on a certain exercise, it's not going to give you that same effect in terms of building and maintaining muscle. And therefore, it's not going to give you the same effect in terms of maintaining that fast metabolism and allowing you to burn body fat easily. So the first thing you need to do is make sure you're doing strength training. If you make one change, I would say this is probably going to make the biggest difference out of most of the things that you could possibly do. The other thing that's really important though is around protein. So the requirement for protein, so the amount of protein you need, increases with age. So a 2018 study found that after eating, older women experienced a smaller increase in muscle protein synthesis. What that basically means is you eat the protein and your body, how much of that protein your body is able to utilize and actually use to build and maintain your muscle. So some studies actually showed a drop of up to 40% compared to younger women. So the research also showed how to achieve the same training response, an older woman would require a greater quantity of protein to achieve the same result. So around about 0.4 grams of protein per kilogram versus about 0.24 grams of protein per kilogram for the younger woman. So what this basically means, the real world context, if we have 2 women who weigh about the same amount, let's say 70 kilos, but one of them's in her late 40s and the other is in her late 20s, the 40-something woman would need to consume 28 grams of protein post-workout to achieve the same training response to a younger counterpart who would see the same benefits from consuming about 17 grams of protein. So I'd say roughly it's around kind of, if you can take in 40% more protein than the sort of recommended daily allowance, that's going to be optimal, and that's going to give you the best kind of response and the best kind of result from your training. So the 2 things to take away from this: number 1, make sure you're doing strength training. That's going to be massive, and it's going to help you build muscle, maintain that fast metabolism. And then to allow you to benefit from that strength training, you need to be taking in enough protein, but that protein amount needs to be higher than what you would have had in your young years. So for many people who are not necessarily that focused on getting a lot of protein in their diet, likely when you're in your 20s and 30s, this wouldn't have been a problem. You still would have got enough to see all of the benefits from what you're doing. But now you're over 40, you can't just kind of leave it to chance and hope that you get enough protein from your meals. It's something that you really need to focus on. You really need to manage. You really need to make sure you're getting enough. And basically by combining that with that strength training, you'll maintain your muscle mass, you'll maintain your metabolism, and you can combat all of that change that happens as a result of that decreasing estrogen level. Imagine living in a home that you've cherished for years.
You've done your best to keep it in good condition,
But no matter how much you clean, paint, or repair,
the problems keep piling up.
the cracks are showing, the roof is leaking, and it feels like everything is getting worse despite your best efforts.
For many women, losing weight around menopause feels just like that.
You've tried diets, workouts, and advice,
But the results don't come and the frustration keeps growing.
That's where our Fit Over 40 private coaching program comes in.
Think of us as your expert renovation team.
We know exactly how to fix the root issues, rebuild your confidence, and create lasting results, just like restoring a home to its best condition.
If you're ready to finally see results that last, click the link in the description below now. Let us help you restore the body and the life you deserve. Yeah, and almost no one who comes to work with us is getting enough protein. That's what we typically find with our one-to-one coaching clients. Almost everyone needs to increase it a certain amount. And it's not as hard as you think. Again, we help them one-to-one. We're not going to go into it today, but we always are able to do it. Even if people are vegetarian, it is possible. It just takes a little bit more work. So we covered a couple of things, but there's still a couple more things I would recommend you do to work with your changing hormones around this time. So the next one I'd consider is all around mood and serotonin. So you might know that serotonin is one of these sort of happy hormones, and it helps to boost your mood, makes you feel better. And you might wonder why this is important. The main reason we see this as important is because a lot of people aren't feeling great around menopause. A lot of people are actually feeling quite rubbish. And if you're not feeling good, what tends to happen? In our experience, a lot of the people we work with, they will turn to alcohol or they'll turn to comfort foods to kind of give themselves a lift. So they'll kind of almost self-medicate with wine and chocolate on the sofa after a stressful day of work. And what this tends to lead to, especially if you're also not strength training, you've lost that muscle, so your metabolism's slower, you're going to gain weight faster than ever before. You're going to start putting on weight, especially around the middle. You probably then feel worse, you're not fit into your clothes, and it can become this vicious spiral of feeling worse and worse, missing out on more things, not wanting to go to social events or not wanting to be in photos. Putting on clothes can take hours because nothing fits anymore and you don't want to go out because of it. And your mood goes down and down and down. You're getting less social interaction or you're not enjoying the social interaction. And it's a vicious spiral that we really want to break out of. And a lot of people assume it's kind of just part of menopause and getting older and they're powerless to affect it. And of course, some of this is a natural change, but a lot of it can be combated to some degree. And if you do get yourself into a better mood, you're going to be able to make better food choices. You're not going to feel tempted or need that wine or chocolate to pick you up. So if you understand the mechanism, again, we can start to work with it. So estrogen helps to turn tryptophan into serotonin in the brain via an enzyme. And you don't really need to know any more details about that other than if your estrogen levels are dropping, you're not going to have as much natural serotonin production. You're going to have to work harder a little bit. I know all this podcast might seem like this, but you're going to have to work smarter ultimately. If you work smarter, it won't feel like you're having to work harder with it. We've talked about lower estrogen means you need to do strength training rather than cardio. So it's just working smarter. It's doing something a bit different. It's not needing to do more hours of stuff. It's just doing different stuff. And it's the same with your mood boosting approach. If you can do what we're going to talk about now, it doesn't have to all take that long, but it's just understanding where your body's at and then working with it to put it in the best possible state. So there's two things I'd recommend here. First of all, and both of them don't take very long. So the first one is to consider some form of HRT, so hormone replacement therapy. Not everyone can take it, but more people can take it than they think from my experience. We've run a lot of events. We have an in-house menopause expert with over 30 years experience in the NHS, and she helps our members with this. I've listened to lots of talks with her where she surveys our clients, and we have about 50% of our client base on HRT. And very rarely do I speak to anyone once they've got it right and optimized for them, do they regret taking it? They often feel better. And if you take the modern type of HRT, the body identical HRT, the breast cancer increased risk is very, very little to none. Looking at the latest data, it could even be none. Versus obesity, for example, which is a massive increase in breast cancer risk, like 5 times the amount smoking increases it, for example. So first thing to do is consider HRT. This isn't a podcast about HRT. There's a lot of other people with information. And as I said, we have our own expert inside Trinity to advise people on this. But that can help to make up for some of the reduced estrogen levels. It's not exactly the same. It doesn't mean you can then just go back to behaving like normal. You need to make all the other changes we're talking about as well if you want to feel good. But that's one thing that can potentially help with giving you a bit more estrogen to turn that tryptophan into the serotonin so your mood is boosted. And that should have a pretty quick effect. The other things you can do, though, are to actively try and release more happy hormones more often. And one really simple way to do this is through exercise. You're going to get more happy hormones. Again, I'm doing air quotes, but let's keep it simple, through doing regular exercise. And there's a lot of research now showing that exercise is more effective then SSRIs, so typical anxiety or depression medication, in improving mood, in lifting mood. So exercise is so effective. You probably know this already, but if you do the right type of exercise, you're going to get a 2-for-1 here. You're going to get all the benefits you talked about, Ben, with building back that lost muscle, increasing your metabolism, firming up, toning up, loads of other things beside that, feeling stronger, feeling fitter. But on top of all of that, it's going to boost your mood. So you're going to be more likely to want to make better food choices. You're going to be better, happy around the family. It's going to be really effective for so many things. So really, the HRT is just a one-off consultation, and then you have it, and it's seconds to apply each day. And then the moving more is something, unless you want to just age badly, ultimately, and get to 60, 70, 75 and be unable to play with your grandkids anymore, be at risk of a fall, which can lead to a break, which massively increases mortality risk. If you want to be one of those people who just kind of gives up on life, fine. But otherwise, you need to be doing that exercise anyway. So this isn't an extra thing. It's just a reminder to do that. And then the last thing to do, we did a whole podcast on this. I had an expert on to talk about this. So if you look up gut and menopause on our podcast, you will find it. But if you eat the right foods, if you eat healthy foods, ultimately that are unprocessed, a lot of plant foods, a lot of seeds, nuts, herbs, spices, vegetables, all of these foods feed your good gut bacteria, and your brain and gut are very closely linked. People think, what they eat is completely unrelated to how they feel, and it's not true at all. They're linked by the vagus nerve, your brain and guts. They're directly linked. And if your gut is healthier, there's so much research showing you'll have better mood, so you'll feel better. And there is also some research to show that typically it's harder to maintain good gut balance in menopause. So again, like you said, Ben, this is another case of not necessarily being able to get away with what you did in your 20s and 30s, where you didn't have to think about this. You actually have to actively think about the quality of the food coming in now. And if you do that, you'll feel good. But if you don't, you're going to feel lots worse than you ever did before. So the next thing to do then is to think about boosting your mood in as many ways as you can to make up for those lower serotonin levels due to lower estrogen levels. And if you do that, again, you're going to eat better, you're going to be more likely to exercise, and you're going to get better results.
So the next thing is all to do with stress and cortisol. So stress, the cortisol is the stress hormone in the body, basically. So estrogen can actually help with cortisol regulation. So for most of the women that we speak to, life is more stressful than ever. So they've got usually a very busy job, busy career. They've got kids. They might also be looking after aging parents as well. So there's a lot of stress and a lot of pressure on them on a day-to-day basis. So the normal approach would just be, and what they might have done up to this point, is to just get their head down and just kind of power through, just sort of try harder. And in terms of trying to also succeed with their fitness goals, it would be to try more extreme diets and exercise approaches to just kind of maintain their weight or kind of reduce their weight. The reality is, though, as women get older, as that estrogen level starts to decrease, the cortisol, the sort of response to the stress you're experiencing is greater from the body. So there is a greater release of that stress hormone cortisol, meaning that even if your life wasn't more stressful than it was 10 years ago, your levels of adrenaline and cortisol, those stressful hormones, will be a lot higher. So your body is constantly running on these stress hormones. If these stress hormones are allowed to be too high for too long, so sort of chronically elevated levels of the stress hormones, it triggers what's called the weight gain triangle. So it's a few hormonal changes, which can basically mean it's more difficult for you to lose weight and it's more easy for you to gain that weight, especially around the middle area. So essentially, we want to avoid having that cortisol level, that stress hormone level, get too high, because it's going to make it difficult to lose weight and it's going to encourage you to store weight around that middle area. So the solution to this is to manage stress in life and manage stress on the body more carefully. So all of the stress that your body takes on is all essentially the same. It doesn't matter if that is work stress, if it's family stress, if it's a extreme dieting approach, or if it's doing a really stressful, high intensity workout. Your body treats all of that stress as being the same. Sleep deprivation actually is another big one. If you're not sleeping as much, that's also going to have an impact on your stress. So everything you can control, you want to try and control. So first of all, try and, if there's any lifestyle factors that you can improve to reduce your stress, then do that. So is there any parts of your work that you can delegate or that you can, reduce that sort of workload on yourself? If you can, do that. Is there a way that you can get to bed earlier? Can you get more sleep? Can you get a better quality of sleep? You can look into all different ways that you can improve that. And then also, once you've kind of done those lifestyle factors, you also need to be making sure that in terms of your exercise and your nutrition, so your approach to trying to achieve your fitness goals is actually a low stress one as well. So what that means is focusing on LIST, so low impact strength training. So I've already gone into in detail how strength training is so important. It's also quite low stress as well. So it's not going to sort of ramp up your heart rate really high. It's not going to be sort of really high intensity exercise, as that can be quite perceived as quite stressful, and it can ramp up that stress hormone level. So you want to focus on that low impact strength training. And you also want to focus on adding in gentle movement, gentle exercise as well. The best way of doing that is probably just making sure you're getting a good amount of steps per day. So if you're just getting out for a walk, that's going to burn calories, but in a very, very low stress way. And also it's going to come with some of those benefits you said before, Rob. It's going to improve your mood as well, just because you're going to be getting outdoors in order to get those steps in the first place. And then when it comes to nutrition, you want to basically avoid any extreme dieting approaches. The main thing to avoid would be really, really low calorie dieting. So all of those kind of 800 calorie, 1000 calorie, 1200 calorie diets that probably might have given you results in your 20s and 30s, those are not a good idea for women who are in their 40s, 50s or 60s. So avoid those kind of really extreme low calorie dieting approaches. And instead you want to follow a more moderate approach where, if you're looking to lose body fat, you do need to eat slightly less than the sort of amount you need to maintain your current body weight, but that just needs to be slightly less. That's the key word. It just needs to be slightly less than you need, not a massive reduction, as that again will just be perceived by the body as very stressful, because if your body realizes that you're starving, then it thinks, oh, this is quite stressful, I'm in danger right now, and it's going to ramp up those stress hormone levels. So instead, you want to focus on getting the right amount of what we call the key three, which are calories, protein, and fiber. These things are all linked again. So, for example, if you're getting enough protein, that's going to help with your muscle building, which is going to help with your weight loss. If you're getting enough fiber, it's likely you're getting a good amount of food, healthy, unprocessed foods like fruits and vegetables, which is going to feed your gut bacteria as well, as you said before, Rob. So all of this is kind of, it's all kind of rolled into one. All these changes kind of feed into each other. So if you do all of these things, so follow a low stress approach to regulate your cortisol, you make better nutrition choices, which are going to regulate your blood sugar, you stay active, you consider HRT to regulate your serotonin and your mood, and you do LIST, low impact strength training, to rebuild lost muscle and maintain bone mass, you can still see great results even in your 40s, 50s, and 60s around the menopause. And our clients lose an average of 12.9 pounds during menopause, and notice their symptoms improving, their waistline shrinking, and they have tons more energy. And that's the average weight loss over a 12-week period. And we have thousands of case studies to prove this, but here is just one example of what you can do if you follow the right approach.
Yeah, so this is from Olga. So this is one of our clients who's in her mid-40s, and she works in London. And she said, I'd gained weight in pregnancy, and then I had to use steroids for a health condition, which combined left me 4 stone overweight, weak and unhappy. I guess I had to hit rock bottom before realizing it couldn't go on like this anymore. I've joined the program and received a very thorough consultation first, then have been allocated an amazing personal coach in Laura. The program is not like any weight loss programs I've ever tried. It's really designed for women over 40 who are slowly or not going through hormonal changes. What totally amazed me was the ease of following the program. I have to admit, I didn't have very high expectations, as I've always said to myself that I'm doomed and nothing can help me with how I look and how I feel now. So I decided to do it as an experiment and followed exactly the steps they guide you through. And to my amazement, I've lost 8 kilograms, 1.25 stone in about 6 weeks. Not even once I felt hungry, my energy levels went up, and I could finally wear a dress for the first time in years and feel better about myself. The program is well designed, easy to follow, and there are video guides for every week, plus weekly check-ins with your coach and weekly live coaching for all the members. I feel brighter, less heavy, and have more energy. I realized a few weeks back that I laugh easier now, and I definitely feel more confident. I can't wait to start the next stage of the plan and carry on to lose inches and feel even brighter, stronger, and healthier. If you're over 40 and, like me, have had enough of the rut of feeling overweight and overwhelmed, I couldn't recommend Trinity enough.
Awesome. And if you want to find out more about Fit Over 40 and our private coaching, head over to www.fit40info.com and you'll find all of the information on that page.
So that just about wraps it up for today's podcast. Thank you so much for joining us again. We'll catch you next week for another episode, and we'll see you then. If you're fed up with trying everything and seeing no results,
Watching your weight creeping up and struggling to fit into your clothes,
and you're looking for the fastest and easiest way to get your ideal weight
and never have to worry about your weight or health again,
you can save yourself years of trial and error by letting us take care of the hard work for you in our Fit Over 40 private coaching program.
over the past decade, our world-class team have personally guided more than 7,000 women to take back control of their health and confidence, and more importantly, maintain those results for life.
If you're ready to finally get results at last and find out how we can help you do that too, click the link in the description below to get the full details now.